Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So we've reached a new age of neo-McCarthyism. Neo-McCarthyism, the Red Scare. The Ruskies are coming. The Ruskies are coming. Now mind you, Russia spends less than the addendum to our military budget. We spend $1 trillion a year, at least $1 trillion a year. Once you add in the military apparatuses and stuff like that we pay in-house for like the Homeland Security and stuff. $1 trillion. On issues regarding military, they put an additional $80 billion on that budget. Russia spends, if I'm not mistaken, like $60 billion on their military in total. But the Ruskies are coming. They're coming to get us. The Ruskies are coming. On election night, Hillary Clinton lost to reality shows. That's what happened. If the Democratic Party had came to its wits and says, you know what, Hillary Clinton doesn't like she's able to do this, so we're going to put up a ham sandwich. We'd have President Ham Sandwich right now in office. The Democrats didn't come to their senses. They didn't put up a ham sandwich, and so we have Donald Trump as our president. The point I want to get at here is at no point in time did Democrats want to own up to the fact that they failed to reality shows. They screamed at the top of their lungs that Trump colluded with Russia. And we need to understand the basis of this. So there are a few parts of this that I want to get to. But the first part of this is the basis of this, where this came from. Donald Trump, when he was running, he was somewhat conciliatory towards Russia. Now, this is something that is somewhat rather recent. I know Obama and them said they were going to do the reset, but at the end of the day, Donald Trump was actually conciliatory towards Russia. In one of the interviews, they made this point about Russia, and because interviewers in this country don't regard our history, or hell, even our current history, honestly, Donald Trump made probably one of the most honest statements Donald Trump has ever made. We're not all that innocent either. And he was saying that in defense of Vladimir Putin, essentially making this point that, yes, I understand that government may be a little, but do you believe that we're that innocent as the United States? Now, this is mind-blowing, because the United States, at least the newspapers, the press for the most part is just state media. And from the perspective of the press, any and everything that the United States does, by definition, is done for the right reasons. So there is not a situation where the United States goes into a country in order to undermine that government. That doesn't process, that doesn't compute. The media would never show a story in that way. CNN, MSNBC, they would never show a story in that way. The story that they would show would be from the standpoint of what the United States said it's going into this particular area to do this particular thing for these humanitarian reasons, that things just kind of fell apart. Even when they did this story in Yemen, it was like CNN or something, not CNN, it was like a nightly news show. But even when they did the thing on Yemen, they didn't necessarily inject that the United States was propping up Saudi Arabia while Saudi Arabia was starving and murdering Yemenis. If the United States is doing something, by definition, from the mainstream media standpoint, we're doing it for the right reasons. Now, the reason I say that is for Donald Trump to say that is somewhat of a mind-blowing thing. And it was honest. It was one of the few honest things Donald Trump has ever said. Democrats, however, used this as an opportunity to pin him and Vladimir Putin, essentially coming up with this red menace and red scare. When Hillary Clinton lost that election, the first thing she screamed was Trump and Russia. Explain to them that I didn't lose on my own merits. Explain to them that the reason I lost was because Trump colluded with Russia and the DNC was attacked and blah, 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 blah. It wasn't me, I was blameless. Now, the media loves this idea because, for the most part, the media looks at Donald Trump as being a cash cow. And so whether he's a cash cow from the standpoint of them holding an empty podium waiting for Donald Trump to say something remarkably stupid, or whether he's a cash cow where they can say that Donald Trump colluded with Russia in order to undermine the United States government and take office, they don't particularly care that much. Reality is subordinate to their ability to make cash and put asses in seats. And so that's what they do. Not to mention, at a certain point, you're invested into the story. So competing evidence, competing information, the fact that you haven't found anything, you've been talking about this shit for a year, none of that matters. All of those things become subordinate to the story itself and being able to keep the story going. They hate the fact that Donald Trump continuously called them fake news, while at the same time continuously pushing out fake news. They dislike him, and yet he put asses in seats. So they are going to continue with the story. Reality be damned. Democrats have a different reason for doing this, though. So the run-of-the-mill Democrats looked at this and were told, they were assiduously told all the time, it's a lock. It's a lock. She's inevitable. She is inevitable. She is going to sail to the office. Donald Trump is a fucking maniac. There's nobody in their right mind that'll vote for Donald Trump. WikiLeaks doesn't exist. She's inevitable. The polls didn't necessarily matter that much. In fact, the polls, the way the Democrats were reading the polls was the same way Mitt Romney was reading the polls when he was running against Obama. They were very selective in the polls that they were reading. The polls were very clear that regardless of what took place, regardless of what gaffe, regardless of what Trump was saying, that ultimately she could not leave him. She could not leave a fucking maniac in the polls. But for that matter, she couldn't leave any of the Republicans in the polls. She was within a point or losing to each of the Republicans, including Ted Cruz, and that is terrifying. That is terrifying. What I'm trying to get at here, though, is the perspective of the Democrats themselves. They looked at this as it was a lock. On the night Hillary Clinton lost the election, HuffPost had her winning by 98% to 2%. I mean, that's fucking amazing. How you fail on that spectacular of a level. They were in a bubble. They were telling themselves certain things of the world that wasn't true at all. And this idea that Donald Trump wins, they have no paradigm whatsoever to understand that loss. Because they have no paradigm to understand that loss, they had to come up with a reason for Donald Trump to have won that contest. Well, what's one of the reasons? You don't want to deal with the fact the party lost. You don't want to deal with the fact the party failed. You don't want to deal with the fact that the rest of the public sees the party as being this kind of plutocratic, this lying group of plutocrats that fuck over the public for their own self-interest. Yo, you don't see any of that. None of that stuff is on the table. Obama helping Wall Street, not on the table. Obama with all these bombings, not on the table. None of that stuff is on the table. The only thing we want to talk about is Trump and Russia because we think Obama was fucking awesome as a president. We think Hillary Clinton was perfectly passable. And we have no idea, no understanding at all why she would lose. So Trump and Russia sounds fucking awesome. Yes, let's go with that. Trump and Russia. There's no reason that Hillary Clinton would have lost. So it had to be Trump and Russia. All of these things are somewhat self-serving. There's also a secondary part that they just hate Donald Trump. And because they hate Donald Trump, any particular excuse that they have to kind of stick a shiv in him, they're going to take that excuse. So it doesn't necessarily matter that she failed in all of these states. It doesn't matter that the 3 million extra votes came out of California, that she for the most part got the stuff and beat out of her from the state elections. None of that stuff matters. From their standpoint, they need a reason to understand the paradigm in which their candidate, who they thought was fucking awesome, would lose to reality shows. And Trump and Russia suits that paradigm. It's just their excuse. It's just their excuse. There's no reality to the excuse. I mean, ultimately, anything Trump does in that office, for the most part, informs this idea of Trump and Russia. They just believe that there's going to be something after a year, maybe in 2 years, something will come up that will show a link between Trump and Russia, that will show collusion. The idea of collusion has gotten more and more sketchy as time has gone on, going so far as to say that WikiLeaks was some Russian agent in order to try to make collusion stick, and even then they still can't make it stick. They still can't make it stick. Both parties in this have a gain. The gain for Democrats has to do with this kind of understanding their worldview, finding some reason to hate Trump, and finding some reason to punch Trump in the nuts. The media at this point is just kind of a cash cow trying to monetize this idea of Trump and Russia, even though they can't necessarily find anything linking those two things together. This is dangerous. I mean, ultimately, they're playing politics, but the politics that they're playing has to do with putting us in an antagonistic posture with a foreign power, a nuclear-powered nation. And they're doing this for the purpose of politics. The politics of this can get away from them. There will be true believers of this bunch. There may be some who understand that they created this shit out of whole cloth in order to attack Donald Trump. But not everybody will believe that. Not everybody would understand that. And ultimately, you will have some of these people taking a hostile posture towards Russia, even though no link has been established. And not to mention, even though we do the exact same fucking thing around the globe. We do the same thing around the globe. To all of this ridiculousness, we've added Jill Stein. They've now pulled Jill Stein into the Russian investigation again. They've pulled Jill Stein into the Russian investigation again. What annoys me about this? There's a few things, if I'm being honest, that annoys me about this. And I won't go into it because this is already going long. But what annoys me about this has to do, it's two fronts. They didn't want to own up to the fact that they lost on their own merits. That was off the table. I understand that Republicans game the system. I understand they have Operation Cross-Check and all this other stuff. But in the exact same situation during the primaries, Democrats did the exact same thing. So I don't want to hear this shit about election rigging and all this other stuff. You did the same thing. And the second part to this is for obfuscation reasons. The Republicans are passing a tax bill that's going to put $1.5 trillion of debt on the back of American citizens. And they're using technical tax scam gimmicks in order to make it look like people are getting a tax cut. Those people aren't getting a tax cut. Their taxes are going to go up. Ultimately, they did that as a budgeting scam just to kind of get around the rules that they've created for themselves. They're putting $1.5 trillion on the backs of Americans. The 60% of that money is going to go to the top 1%. That is fucking amazing. They're going to go after social programs after this, meaning Social Security, Medicare, etc., etc. All those things are now on the table because these guys looked at it as, we're getting over. We're getting over. With this tax scam being put on the American public, with them essentially taking things from other services, including gutting the Affordable Care Act, millions of people are going to lose their health care after this thing passes. The conversation that Democrats are having is still about Trump and Russia. Trump is sexist. Trump and Russia. Trump and Nazis. Trump and everything else, with the exception of fighting on the merits that you need to fight on. Economics. They can't fight on the level of economics because their donors have told them to shut up about class. And so any and everything else is going to come up, with the exception of the Democrats putting forward a plan that they themselves can govern by. The only person who's doing this is Sanders. Everybody else, for the most part, just take shots at Trump, but take shots at the tax bill and everything else. And you need to do that. I mean, so don't misunderstand me. I'm just making the point that all of this Trump and Russia stuff that Democrats and the media have jumped onto, they've shown nothing to demonstrate that these two things are connected at all. But they pushed the stuff over the course of a year. They've put us at odds with another nation. They didn't do it because they needed to. They didn't do it because it was one of those things that was just pressing threat with somebody at our shores. They did it purely for the point of politics. They're going after Jill Stein. Again, it's purely for the sake of politics. This is no reality to this stuff. They've shown nothing. If they had evidence, do you honestly believe that they would not have shown that evidence by now? They have squat. They have bupkis. They're clinging on to this, like clinging on to a prayer, because they full well understand that she lost that election. They don't want to talk about why they lost the election, and they want to keep this thing going just as an attack piece to go at Donald Trump. All of this stuff obfuscates from this idea that they're raping the public, and that you can't have this honest conversation about economics because you have to deal with issues of class. And Democrats are completely ill-prepared to deal with issues of class, particularly since their donors told them to shut up about this class stuff. Trump and Russia is obfuscation. The media just uses it for cash. Democrats just use it for something to hang their hat onto as a paradigm to explain why Hillary Clinton lost. Until I see an actual reality to this, I'm going to assume that these people are just on a fucking conspiracy theory for their own ends. For their own ends. So, yeah, good luck with the Trump and Russia thing. Good luck trying to make that stick. At this point, you've shown nothing. The public, for the most part, is just been completely distrustful of you. And yes, you may have 30% Democrats, but that's it. The only people who believe this stuff are Democrats. Republicans don't believe in it, don't care. They think you're doing it for hay. Progressives don't believe it, don't care. They think you're doing it for political hay. So you have a very finite amount of the population that buys into this. It puts me in mind when Republicans will come out with these conspiracy theories during Obama's term. That's what it puts me in mind of. It just seems like the roles have been reversed and it's just flipped over. So instead of the birther thing, you have the Russiagate thing. It's fucking amazing. Yeah, it's fucking amazing. I'm going to leave it at that. They brought in Jill Stein to this, which is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. I'm going to review the Donna Brazile thing and the Tim Black thing. There are problems with the way Donna Brazile presented this idea of her being attacked and all this other stuff. And all of this kind of goes to the same thing. These guys are going with this idea that Russia attacked them because they don't want to own up to the fact that they lost an election. That's the bare bones of it. That's the bare bones. Did they do an autopsy? Did they own up to the fact that they, All this stuff, the only thing that they've said up to this point was Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia. They didn't do an autopsy. They didn't want to investigate what was their failures. They had this unity commission while at the same time saying they were completely united. They've been lying through their teeth for the past year and a half, particularly during the election itself. Yeah, well, why on earth would anybody take your word for it that you were hacked? And before you say, well, the NSA, CIA, they're reasonably, they've presented no evidence, at least no real evidence. They, for the most part, just asserted, take our word for it. Well, that's not enough. If you're going to position us against a nuclear powered nation, you need to give us a little bit more than just quote unquote your word. So yes, I think this is a hoax. I think this is a conspiracy theory. I think they're doing this purely for political ends. And until I see evidence to the contrary, that's what I'm going with. They've dragged Jill Stein into this, which is just fucking amazing. It gets across the ridiculousness of the entire process. This is done purely to try to blunt the edges of the left. That's it. Look, attack Trump and blunt the edges of the left. They're trying to kill two birds with one stone. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. This is gone far too long. Initially, I was going to do this about the Jill Stein thing, but I think it's more important to kind of nail down, this is just politics. This is an unreality in the sense of politics. Until they show you something concrete showing that there was some kind of link between Trump and Russia, you shouldn't believe it. Why would you believe it? Why would you believe it? The contrary data made the point that this was a leak. It wasn't a hack. And ultimately the speeds, when they measured the speeds, not ended on this, when they were measuring the speeds and figuring out how long it took from point A to point B, the thing that they found that it compared to was a leak. A USB download. Not a hack. A leak. A leak. All of this has been done out of whole cloth. All of this was done out of whole cloth. They needed a political gimmick in order to attack Trump. They found their political gimmick in Trump and Russia. So, I will leave it at that. I'm going to believe that this is a conspiracy theory until I actually see something hard and concrete about it. So, alright guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks guys. Ah, I'm ready my Ruski, my red shirt. Apparently, I'm a Russian agent getting a check from Vladimir Putin. It's like fucking awesome. It's like, Putin needs to give me my fucking check because I haven't got it yet. All right, I did that. Thanks, guys.